Hey guys. So do you remember that scene in the movie This Is 40 where the mom, she goes up to her daughter's school and she confronts her daughter's bully in the hallway, and he's just like this dorky looking kid, but she approaches him and she ends up like really hurting his feelings, and then she has to have the whole meeting in the principal's office with his mom, and she kind of like denies the whole thing because she made him cry and said some really mean things. I have replayed this movie scene over and over in my mind, and once I became a mom, this scene has become like so relatable to me. And there's been so many situations, even when my son was little, where I felt like in that moment, like I was that mom in the movie, because it's just like when we feel like our kid is being like bullied in any kind of way, or just like another kid is being mean to them or hurts them, like that mama bear mode just like comes out. And for me, like there is like no holding me back. I am mama bear, and you are not going to be nasty to my kid. You're not going to touch my kid. You're not going to say anything mean to my kid, or your feelings are going to get hurt. Period. And there's just been so many situations that I look back on, and I just feel like they all stem from just this need to like protect my child. And that's really where it comes from. But there has definitely been situations where I'm like, yeah, that was a lot, but we do what we do as moms to protect our kids. And, I don't think we should apologize for that. I honestly think some parents need to do a better job of teaching their kids not to be little fucking assholes to other kids. So, sorry, not sorry if your kid's the asshole in this situation, because I feel like sometimes kids need to be put in their place. And if their parents aren't going to do it, hey, I just might do it for you. Is this mic on? Ugh, I'm so bad with fucking technology.
Mommy, you said the F word.
Sorry, babe. Welcome to Mommy, You Said the F Word. I'm your host, Sarah Goldsboro. I've experienced firsthand the messy, magical, and sometimes maddening world of motherhood. We'll share some laughs and shed some tears as I dive deep into the highs and lows of life, confront loss, chat about career, fitness, creating a life you love, finding yourself again after kids, and who the fuck knows what else. This is a space where authenticity reigns supreme. So get ready to strip away the BS and get candid as fuck. I can remember when Cam was, I think, about 3 years old, one of the first incidents that occurred. And it was in our neighborhood, and there's this little girl. She's 2 years older than Cam. So she was about 5 or 6. Cam was about 3 or 4. And the kids were all playing outside. They like to play hide and go seek and tag and all the normal little kid games. And, this girl was quite a bit bigger than Cam. And she was kind of like the neighborhood bully, because she was just not very nice to a lot of the other kids. This was about 5 years ago, and she's older now, and she's a lovely young girl, but she was a little bit of a bully when she was younger. And there was this day where the kids were playing outside, and Cam came inside crying. And that usually didn't happen. And he's also not the type of kid to like make things up. So he came inside crying and said that this little girl in our neighborhood had like punched him a couple times, like in his back. And I was like, what? I was like, no. So I told her to go home, because like also she lived down the street and her parents would kind of watch her from afar. They usually wouldn't like come down the street. So I was like, you need to go home. And I ended up text messaging her mom, and I basically told her mom what happened. And the mom and I don't really get along super well, but I was like, she needs to know that her daughter is hitting other kids. So I told her what happened, and the mom, of course, was like, well, she said that, Cam started it. I'm like, Cam's 3. Like, I don't care what Cam did. First of all, I know he would never put his hands on another kid. He's just not that kid. And from what my son said and what some of the other kids said is that she punched him a couple of times, and that's not okay. And if you're not gonna take responsibility, then she can no longer play with my son. And, if she wants to play around my house, like, you're gonna have to watch her. Like, she can't be unattended. And so basically the mom, she semi apologized, but it was more, oh, they both, played a part in this. I'm like, no, you're not going to take responsibility for your daughter's actions, then I'm not gonna have anything to do with you. And honestly, like, we didn't talk for a few years, and like her daughter kind of like stayed away, and things are fine now. It was 5 years ago. The kids were a lot smaller then. I've crossed paths with the mom, and we're fine. But at the time I was just like, no, like, I'm going to tell you, like, what's up, especially if you're the type of parent that, like, your kid is a known troublemaker, bully, whatever, and you're not really taking responsibility or teaching them otherwise. I'm like, no. Like, I think people have a right to put you in your place and tell you what's up. And, maybe you need to fix that. I don't have any tolerance for kids bullying other kids, but especially not putting their hands on them. I am like, zero tolerance. Not gonna happen. We're gonna have a problem. I have a problem with the kid. I have a problem with the parents. Like, yeah. Recently, Cam had like a small incident in his classroom with another boy, and this was very recently. And again, Cam is chill, and Cam has a lot of friends at school, but for some reason, this one little boy he was having issues with, he wouldn't give back something that Cam lent him. The teacher had to get involved, and then the kid got mad because the teacher got involved, and then ended up pulling Cam's chair out from under him, and Cam hit his head and had to go to the nurse's office. And that's where I'm like, again, draw the line at where my kid gets hurt. Like, we have an issue. And so, I was texting back and forth with the teacher, and the teacher wasn't quite giving me like the concerned energy that I was looking for. So I was getting a little heated, and I called the other kid an asshole. And so a half hour later, I get a call from the principal, which I was like, great, get me on the phone with the principal. And the principal was very apologetic, and she agreed that, like, that never should have happened. And she honestly didn't even know the whole situation. The teacher hadn't even told her the whole situation. So she was very apologetic, and she was like, thank God he's okay. Like, it could have been a worse situation had he hit his head, on the floor or the desk. He hit it on a plastic chair. So, he got a little bump, but he was fine. But it could have been a lot worse. And so, sometimes you gotta get a little, you got to get up in people's faces sometimes, because things can happen. Kids do stupid stuff, but like, as adults, I really feel like it's our job as like parents and teachers to really like let the kids know, like, this is not okay. Because, my son's only 8, but, kids need to learn the lesson now, so they're not like doing these kinds of things at like 15, 16 years old, where like they could really get hurt and, get into fights and all of that. Like, I'm just really trying to like hold on and, protect my child as long as I can, because they get big so quick, and you can only protect them for so long before I feel like they're just out there in the world. So yes, Mama Bear definitely came out. So today I am going to give you my top 3 mommy mishaps. And like I said, for me, they always come from a place of just wanting to protect my kid and just, always just being scared that he's going to be hurt in some way, whether it's physical, emotional. Like, I am such a mama bear. I'm so protective of my son. I just love him so much. But I have definitely had some mommy mishaps, incidents that, just really stand out in my mind. When I talk to people about, things that happen, they're like, oh my God, yeah. Like, it's just one thing after another with these kids. And so today I am going to give you my top 3 mommy mishaps. So my first one is a funny one. And it was when Cam was probably, again, maybe like 2 or 3 years old. He was really little. And, as moms with little ones, we're always trying to find things for them to do, especially like in the winter time. We live in Baltimore, so it gets cold in the winter. They can't really play outside every day. So we end up going to these like indoor playground type places. And I remember I had taken him to this indoor playground that was for, I feel like, littler kids. They had some like bouncy houses. They had ball pits. So Cam was playing in one of the ball pits, and I believe he was kind of playing by himself. It wasn't like super crowded the day that we went. And he was kind of just entertaining himself, and I was just right there kind of watching him. He was playing with a basketball, and he was bouncing it and like kind of throwing it and going and getting it and just playing by himself. And this little girl, she was probably about like 5 or 6, and Cam was like 2 or 3. And she kept coming into the ball pit where he was playing and would snatch the ball that he was playing with from him and like run away. And she wasn't being playful. It was like more like mean spirited. And the first time it happened, he kind of was like, I think just like looking around, like, is she coming back with my ball that I was playing with? So I found another of the same ball and gave it to him. And would you know it, a few minutes later, here comes this little girl again, and she runs into the ball pit and snatches the ball from him again. The second ball that I went and got him. This time, he started crying, and he was like, she obviously was not trying to play with him, and she kept snatching this ball from him, and he was just like playing very nicely by himself. And I was like, why does this little girl keep snatching this ball from him? And she's got this whole place to play with. And I was like, also, like, where the fuck are her parents? And I am definitely, like I said in prior episodes, I'm definitely more of like a helicopter mom. Like, I'm around. Like, my kid's not going to just be playing and I'm going to be across the room, like on my phone. Like, I am definitely like in the mix, or I'm at least, where I can see him very clearly. But he was little at the time, so I was like right there. And, I let it slide the first couple times with this little girl. But I didn't see her parents around. I'm like, okay, like, where's her parents? And like, why does she keep coming and snatching this ball from him? And now he's upset. So, I was just like, Cam, I was like, come on, buddy. I was like, let's just do something else. But he wanted this ball. So again, I found another one of these like basketball bouncy balls and gave it to him. And I was like, I swear to God, if this little girl comes and snatches this ball out of his hand again, I was like, it's going to be the last thing she does. And so a few minutes later, here she comes. So she goes in and she takes the ball from him and turns around, and I had stooped down to her eye level, and I was like, give him the ball back right now. And she just like kind of was like standing there, like staring at me like a deer in headlights. And I was like, I don't even give a fuck where her parents are. It's like, let her parents come over here. And I just stared at her until she turned around and gave Cam the ball back. And then I got out of her way and she exited the ball pit. And her mom did finally walk over to me and she was like, is there a problem? And I was like, yeah, your daughter keeps snatching the ball out of my son's hand. This is the third time she was about to do it. And yeah, so I told her not to do it anymore. And the mom was just like, kind of like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, watch your fucking kid. And make sure she's not being a fucking asshole, because I feel like it's like always these kids that like pick on like kids that are a little younger than them. And I get it, they're little themselves, 5, 6 years old, but she was old enough to like know better. And I feel like she was like kind of targeting him because he was by himself, and I guess she didn't think I was watching or paying attention. So then it was so funny. I will never forget, a few minutes later, like I see her go in the ball pit again. And I don't know if she was going to do anything or not, but Cam, little Cam, 2, 3 years old, he has this ball in his hand and he sees this girl coming. He tosses the ball over the side of the ball pit. It was like one of those big, like inflatable ball pits. He throws the ball over the side of the ball pit to where he was like, neither one of us is gonna play with this bitch. Like, that was like the energy. He was like, He's like, if I can't play with it, you can't play with it. And it was like in the corner where we like couldn't even get to it. I laughed my ass off. I was like, yes. I was like, I cannot with him. It was so funny. But yeah, that was like one of the first times I can remember, besides the little neighborhood incident that I told you about. That was like really like the first incident that happened like out in public. But I really felt like my mama bear coming out that day, because I don't have patience for mean ass kids. And I also don't have patience for dumbass parents. And like, I don't care. Like, my kid is not perfect, and I've definitely had to like apologize on my child's behalf before, but like, don't act clueless and don't act like your kid is fucking perfect and like you have no right to say anything to them. I was not mean to her. I did not curse at her. I simply said, give him the ball back now. And I blocked her from being able to leave the ball pit. So I'm sorry if that is out of line, then maybe you should watch your kid a little closer. So anyway, that was my number 3 mommy mishap. So my next memory, mishap, incident that I can remember, oh my gosh, this is my number 2 mommy mishap. And unfortunately, it did not happen with me around. It happened when my son was at daycare. And I loved his daycare lady that he went to. She was great. It was one of these like in-home daycares, which we were so lucky to find. It was before 2020, when daycare was a lot easier to find, I would say. But we found this daycare lady. It was actually a friend of mine. Her kids had all gone there. And I had met this woman like at her daughter's birthday parties before. She was super sweet, great with the kids. She only had like a small group of kids since it was at her house. So Cam went to her a few days a week, starting when he was about 2 years old. I mean, she got him potty trained. She put him on a balance bike. He learned to ride a bike by the time he was like 3 years old. Like, she was great. But she was definitely like, I feel like a little more adventurous than maybe I am as a mom. Like, she definitely, she'd been taking care of kids for like 30 years. So I'm sure she's like a lot more chill when it comes to certain things. Whereas I'm like, oh my gosh, like I came to pick him up one day and he was like going down her driveway on the balance bike, like 20 miles an hour. And I was like, oh my God. And she was like, oh, he's fine. He's great on the balance bike. And, I would sometimes come and pick him up and she would be swinging him on the swing and he would be like, just flying. And I was like, oh my gosh. She was definitely much more adventurous than me, but I was like, it's fine. Nothing's ever happened. Like, I trust her. So this one day I was in the salon working, and, I would keep my phone by me because, in case he got sick or needed to be picked up early or whatever, I would always have my phone by me. But, she would only call if it were like an emergency. And this day she's calling me and I'm like, oh gosh, it's like that moment where like your heart kind of stops and you're like, what happened? So I answer the phone and I'm like, hi, I'm like, everything okay? And she's like, well, before I tell you what happened, yes, he's fine. And I'm like, what happened? And I mean, I was in the middle of doing a client. So I had to like step away into like a quieter area of the salon. And she told me that they were playing outside and he was running down the sidewalk and he just like ate shit and face planted into the sidewalk. And I said, okay. I was like, I was thinking like he scraped up his knees or whatever. And she's like, well, and so she FaceTimes me. And I'm like, oh gosh. And she's like, he's fine. He's fine. Don't get upset. And I'm like, what? Like, just let me see him. Like, what's wrong? So she FaceTimes me and his entire face from forehead to chin was just like completely scraped up. And I mean, it was like bloody, and I immediately started crying. And he was perfectly fine. He was sitting there like, I think he was like playing with something or eating something. He didn't even know like what his face looked like. I'm sure when it happened, he cried because it probably, stung when he scraped up his face. But he had no idea like his face was all scraped up. So at this point, he was fine. She had cleaned him up and he was playing, but I was like a wreck. I was at work and I just started like bawling. And she's like, I'm so sorry. She's like, but I promise you he's fine. And I was like, I know, but like his face is all scraped up. And I was a mess. And so, I told my husband what happened, and he's the same as me. He's a helicopter dad. He gets very protective of him, sometimes more than me. So he wasn't happy either. But I was like, after I went home and, saw him, I don't remember if I picked him up from daycare that day or my husband did. But finally, when I saw him and I realized, it wasn't anything major, it was mostly superficial scrapes on his face. And, they healed over the next week or two. But in that moment, I was like, okay. I was like, he's fine. Like, these kinds of things are going to happen. Like, thank God it wasn't anything worse. It wasn't a broken bone or, anything like that. Like, little boys especially, they're going to get scraped up. They're rambunctious. They, trip and fall. They push each other. They get bumps and bruises. But, oh my gosh, in that moment, it was like the end of the world. And I just seeing his face like that was just, I was distraught. Nobody wants to see their kid hurt. And that definitely is a moment that stands out for me. Okay, guys. So my number one mommy mishap, I simply refer to it as the Skateland incident. And you'll understand why in a minute. But so this was in 2021. So this particular day, it was on a Sunday. My husband was working. He works every other weekend. So it was just Cam and I that day. And a few weeks prior to this, I had taken him roller skating for the first time with one of my girlfriends and her son. And they had a really good time. Cam was, I believe, 5 or 6 years old. And so this was like his first time roller skating, and we had a lot of fun. It was the first time I had roller skated since I was like a teenager, and I actually did pretty good. And so we were out there roller skating and had a lot of fun. And so this particular Sunday, a couple weeks later, when my husband was at work, I was trying to find something to do with Cam, and he goes, "Mommy, can we go roller skating again?" And I said, "You know what?" I said, "That's a good idea." And so it was just he and I this day, and I took him to Skateland, which is a popular skate rink near my house, and it is the same exact skate rink that I used to go to when I was a teenager. I mean, it looks exactly the same, it smells exactly the same. It literally smells like popcorn and feet. When you go in there, it's like stepping back in time. It's like going right back to like the 80s and the 90s. So I took him skating this day, and we had a really good time. The only thing was, this particular day it was pretty crowded. It was a Sunday afternoon, so there was like some birthdays going on, and it was just like a lot more people there that day than the couple weeks prior when we had gone skating for the first time. So I was just like a little, I don't know, it just kind of gave me a little bit of anxiety because this was only his second time roller skating. But he was getting pretty comfortable on the skates. And, so I was skating with him, and we would go out on the floor and I would hold his hand, and he was really starting to get the hang of it. And I was like, you know what? This is like maybe something that he and I could do more regularly. He really seems to enjoy it. He's so fearless, and he is just like, he picks up on like sports and like those types of activities like so quickly. Like I said, he learned to ride a bike very young. He's just naturally good at sports, and like I wasn't surprised that skating came pretty easy for him as well. So I was really happy that this was something that he enjoyed and we could like, do together. It was something active. And so then we were getting ready to leave. We both still had our skates on. We were coming off of the rink. I said, "Cam, let's get ready to go." And we had been there for like an hour or two. It was time to go. And we were coming off the rink. And thank God, when things just like it happen and you feel like you were like protected in that moment, I so just feel like Cam was being protected in that moment because he was in front of me going off the rink. I was behind him, and I didn't even see anybody coming towards me. All I know is he literally stepped off the rink. I was right about to come off the rink, and I just feel somebody plow into me like full speed. It felt like I got hit by a car. And I just feel my feet come out from under me because, again, I did not see anybody like coming towards me. So I just remember like my feet coming out from under me and falling. And the way that like this is a common injury with roller skating, because when you fall backwards generally, because you're on roller skates, and so your feet come out from under you and you fall backwards. And I just out of, not instinct, I went to brace myself with my hand, and I just felt my wrist snap. And I was in shock. I look at my hand. My hand is literally like, just like hanging there. And so I fell, broke my wrist, and I instantly just like went into shock because like these things happen so fast and you just don't have time to process anything. And the first thought that like went through my, because it was my right hand, my right wrist, the first thought that went through my head was like, oh my God, I'm not ever going to be able to do hair ever again. Like that was literally like the first thought that went through my mind. And then the second thought that went through my mind was, I can't pass out because I'm here by myself with Cam. And because I think my body just like went into shock. I wasn't in like any pain right away, but I was very like dizzy, and I felt as if like I could pass out, and I was so scared that I was going to pass out because like one of my biggest fears is like something like me being alone with Cam somewhere and something happening to me and then like him not knowing what to do. And again, he was only like 5 or 6. And so I had luckily I had like a little mini book bag on my back. It was not a purse, but like I didn't bring a purse with me that day. I had like a little mini backpack with like my phone and my wallet and like Cam's water bottle and stuff. So thankfully, like I had my phone right there with me. It wasn't like, I know some people like put their stuff in like a locker. Thankfully, I had my phone right there with me. And, you know, people were like gathered around me. And so what had basically happened was like this, it was like a teenager. He was like 13 or 14 years old. He, I guess, like couldn't stop himself, you know, like when you're skating and you see people like kind of like run into like the side of the wall to like stop themselves because like they don't really know how to skate, so they don't know how to stop themselves. And basically he just like, from what it looked like, he must have just like lost control and just like crashed right into me. And because I remember like after I went down, I remember like looking over to my side and like there was a kid that was like maybe about 13 or 14 years old, like on the ground next to me. And like he was perfectly fine. But as soon as he saw that I was like injured, he just like took off. And I just, you know, in that moment, I was in shock. So I wasn't like looking for him or anything. So I know it was like a kid kind of just like crashed into me. That's what made me fall. And so, you know, there was just like people around me and they were like, you know, like, what can we do? So somebody called 911. Of course, somebody from the skate rink came over to take like an incident report, which in that moment I was like, fuck off. Like, I'm not in the mood to give you all my information right now. Like, I am worried about like myself, my son. So there was, you know, some really nice ladies there that helped me like take my skates off, take Cam's skates off. Somebody got my phone. I was like, can you just get my phone out of my bag for me? I really need to like call my husband. And so I call my husband. He's at work and he works like almost like an hour away. And so I call him, and the second he like answers his phone, I like just start like screaming. And he thought something happened to Cam. And so I told him like I broke my wrist and they called an ambulance and I'm probably gonna have to go to the ER. And I just remember him just being like, I'm coming. And that was it. But I knew it was going to take him a long time to get to Skateland because again, he worked like almost an hour away. So I called my parents, and my parents live close by, but like I didn't even know. Sometimes they go away for the weekend. I didn't even know like if they were in town. I call them, and again, I just like start like frantically kind of screaming and telling them what happened. And thankfully, they were in town and they weren't far away. They were actually at their friend's retirement party or something, and they ended up having to leave because I was like, you have to come get Cam. I'm by myself with him and I don't want to like leave in an ambulance because I don't want to take him to the ER with me. I don't want them to give me any kind of medication until somebody gets here because I was so afraid that, again, like I was going to pass out or be just out of it in any kind of way by myself with him. And so my parents got there so fast. They were there probably in like 10, 15 minutes. So by the time that the paramedics got there, I was able to walk out to the ambulance. But my wrist was just, again, it was just like hanging there. And so I had to kind of like hold my arm close to my body, and I just had Cam like hold on to my arm. And I was like, you know, there was ladies there and they were like, do you want us to stay with your son? I'm like, no, no, no. I was like, he's staying with me. I was like, my parents are on the way. his grandparents and they can take him when they get here. I was like, thank you so much, but like, no, I don't want him to leave my side. And so thankfully, by the time I got out to the ambulance, my parents had gotten there. And I just remember like sitting in the ambulance and Cam was kind of like sitting next to me and the paramedics were so nice. And I just remember like seeing my parents kind of at the doors to the back of the ambulance were open and they took Cam and he was not crying this entire time. I was frantic and I probably should have tried to like keep myself calmer like in front of him, but I was very upset that this happened. And again, I was afraid and I was just trying to like protect him. And there was like, a big crowd of people around us at this point. I was very upset and, but he was so calm and just like keeping himself together. So like the second that he saw my parents, he just started crying and my mom was holding him and she was like, Mommy's gonna be okay. It's okay. And he just was looking at me. And I just remember like as soon as my parents got there, I was already hooked up to an IV and they were literally just waiting for my parents to get there before they gave me any kind of like pain medication because they said once your like adrenaline starts to wear off, like you're going to be in a lot of pain. You just broke your wrist. And they were right. It was starting to like sit in. And so as soon as my parents got there, they gave me pain meds and I just remember seeing my son's face. He was just like crying and I just remember like everything kind of going very fuzzy and dark after that. I was completely out of it and I don't remember what they gave me, but I was like on a different planet. And I was so happy that I didn't let them give me anything until after my parents arrived, because again, like I would have had no control over like anything. I wouldn't have been able to protect Cam in any kind of way or talk to him. I was completely gone at that point. So anyway, he was safe with my parents and my husband just came right to the ER. Unfortunately, because it was 2021, they still had a lot of the COVID restrictions at the hospital. So he was not allowed in the ER. I was there all by myself for about, oh my gosh, probably about 8 hours. They had to reset my wrist twice, which was the worst pain I think I've ever been in besides childbirth. But thankfully, my mom's cousin is a very well-known hand surgeon in the Baltimore area. And so she texted him directly and I was able to have surgery 4 days after I broke my wrist, which that's the worst period of time, like before you have surgery to repair a broken bone. You're in so much pain. So luckily I didn't have to wait that long before I had surgery. But yeah, I had to undergo surgery. My wrist, like the large bone in your wrist, was completely severed. And I was off work for I think a total of it was like 8 to 10 weeks. I had to have physical therapy to get mobility back in my wrist and my hand. It was like a major thing. And I was so scared because I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to do hair again. And I was like, if I can't do hair, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. But also, I was just like, God damn it. I was like, why did this have to happen with Cam? Like, it was like literally one of my worst fears came to life. Just something happening to me alone with my child. And, I just felt like I couldn't do anything to protect him in that moment. So that was my number one mommy mishap incident that happened. And I'll tell you what, I went 40 years without breaking a bone. Besides, I think like spraining my ankle when I was in middle school, but I had never broken a bone before. Let me tell you what, it is right up there with childbirth. It is not fun. So I tell all of my mommy friends, I'm like, don't be anybody's hero. Don't try to be the cool mom. I will never go roller skating again. People tell me all the time, they're like, are you going to go roller skating again to kind of like, overcome that fear? I said, look, I have nothing to prove. If my kid wants to go roller skating, that's fine. He can go roller skating. I will put him in a helmet, wrist guards, knee pads, elbow pads, but he can go roller skating. Me, on the other hand, never again. Like, my skating days are done. I have nothing to prove. I think I proved all I needed to prove that day, which was after 40, you do not need to be on roller skates. If you are, wear all the padding and be careful, because breaking a bone is not fun. And apparently it's very easy to do with roller skating. When I was in the ER that day, there was like 2 other people, they said, with the same injury as me. I was like, was everybody out skating today or something? Like, I don't understand. But anyway, we as moms, we are doing the best that we can. Things are always going to happen. I just thank God that at least so far, nothing terrible, nothing major, knock on wood, has happened to my son. That is my biggest fear. So if something were to happen to me, I will take that all day long over my son getting hurt. And, us as moms, we are mama bears. We are going to protect our kids at all costs, whether it's bullies or injuries or just whatever it is. Like, that is what God put us here on earth to do, is to just protect them and be there for them and stand up for them. And so I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job at that. I don't care if it takes me cussing out a kid or two, or just, he's always going to know that his mom loves him. I'm like, I'm your girl, Cam. I'm like, you don't ever have to worry about anything. Mommy's got your back. And I will always be like that. I don't care how old he is. And, I feel like that is what we're here to do, is just protect our kids. Shit will happen. And, so I just wanted to share a couple of my mommy mishaps with you. Thank you for listening today. And I look forward to hearing some of your stories, some of your mommy mishaps. And yeah, so I'll talk to you again soon. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Show me some love by sharing this episode, and be the first to know when new episodes drop by following the show wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube and follow me on social media at Mommy You Said the F Word.